Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Yes. I'm very sorry I don't speak Dutch. I always feel bad when I come to a country and you're all welcoming and wonderful, and I speak French, but I doubt that's going to help me in this situation. So my name is Nathalie Nahai. I'm a web psychologist, which means that I'm interested in the psychological strategies behind what makes people click online. I do have a background in psychology. I did a BSc in psychology about 10 years ago, before there were things like web science and cyber psychology, before all of that emerged. And I went from university and ended up in art college, as you do, in London, Central St. Martin's. And it was there, while I was doing music and artsy things, that I discovered web design, kind of by accident. And it wasn't until 2 years ago that I started thinking about bringing different elements together. I'm sure many of you know who are sitting in this room, it's quite unusual for anyone in this room to have been trained at university level in the discipline in which you now work, unless it's straightforward marketing. So things like digital strategy, we couldn't train in that when we were 20 or 18 or whatever. We've all had to find our own way, which I think puts us in a very strong position, because it means that we've had to take knowledge from all our different disciplines, come together with similar beliefs and interests, and create something new, which is very, very exciting. And that's essentially what I tried to do with this, was to bring these different disciplines together. But I'm going to explain that in a minute. First of all, I want to play a little game with you, because it's late in the day and you're either jacked up on caffeine or falling asleep. So I want to imagine that I'm going to give each and every one of you a very fast, very beautiful car. Okay, picture your favorite car that you want. And with this car, I want you to get from A to B in the fastest, most direct route possible. But there's a catch. For each and every one of you, it's a different territory. No one has a map, and not a single person who has ever played this game has made it from A to B the first time around, and it's only very few people that complete it successfully. If you get to B, a pot of gold awaits you, right? Okay, so what's your incentive? Your incentive is to get to that point. The thing is, this game isn't just a game. It's the game that you and I play every single day when we try to get new customers online, when we compete for their attention, for their engagement. The car, the beautiful fast car, represents each one of your customers. The territory is the World Wide Web. The direction that you take, the route that you take, is their online experience, which you're in charge of. But the catch is that actually there's a map to this territory, a map that people have written before you, who have tried the territory, who have put their combined knowledge together, that you can use to get you to that point quickly and effectively with a minimal amount of failure, which is good, right? The map... Oh, sorry. The map is web psychology, or I like to think of it as web psychology. It's the roadmap to online success, in that it studies, empirically, it uses research to study how our online environments influence our attitudes and our behaviors. It's not a guessing game. It aggregates knowledge from a whole range of incredibly exciting but different disciplines. So, everything from human-computer interaction, how we respond and interact with different devices, from a tablet to a phone to a laptop. Cross-cultural psychology, of which you have actually got one of the best backgrounds. Geert Hofstede, I've cited him in my book. He's got some fascinating insights into that. User experience, social psychology, which you heard a little bit about earlier today. Neuroaesthetics, how we respond to visual stimuli at the level of brain activity. Cognitive psychology, behavioral economics, how we respond to things at a seemingly irrational level. All of these disciplines, all of these disciplines can give us an insight into online behavior. If you think of them as facets on a diamond, web psychology is a term that I've coined to try and bring these together so that we can start seeing how they work with web psychology as a point of convergence. Does that make sense? Any questions? No? Yeah? Okay, feel free to interrupt and I'll try to take any questions. So it's about providing a psychological context within which all of our industries operate, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in social media, whatever it is that you're doing. Advertising has been doing this for a while, although it's more complex now. You've got to think about the individual and the cultural psychology of your target audience, of your customer, in order to make sense of anything else that you're doing. Otherwise, your view is just too myopic, and it will only work for a short amount of time. The exciting thing about this is that many of the things that we expect to work, because they've worked before, work based on the fact that social principles haven't changed that much in terms of our desires and our deep-seated, hardwired preferences. We're a social species. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the way in which we express these old, hardwired desires. So, for instance, recent research has found that young kids who are starting to use, in some places, starting to use screens, who are socially anxious, are finding themselves in a situation in which they can engage better with other people. It's helping them. On the flip side of that, and there's always a mixed picture, other people have found that actually people are stuck so behind their screens at a young age that we're losing the ability to form understanding about eye contact and how vital that is for a sense of belongingness. So a lot of the interaction that we can have can sometimes end up being quite superficial. That's why psychology matters, because it can help us figure out when these strategies work, when they don't, how they're lacking, and how we can create a better online experience for everyone and a better sustainable business model for us all. So I'm going to start with a question, why use social media? I'm then going to use three kind of seminal case studies that I think typify certain social psychological principles very well. We're going to dissect those, see why they work and how, and then a couple of key takeaways, and then your questions at the end. Okay, so I want to ask you guys in the room, how many of you use social media personally for your friends? Okay, everyone, me too. How many of you use it professionally, so to tweet about your business, Facebook? Actually, quite a lot fewer than that. What is it, if I can get just a couple of answers shouted out, what is it that makes you less likely to use social media for your business? Because there are a lot fewer of you the second time around. So if you didn't raise your hand on the second time, what is it that makes you reluctant to use social media in your business? Come on.
Less fun.
Less fun? Why is it less fun?
Because I like to talk to my friends. Talk to my customers.
Okay, so maybe... So that means one of two things. Either you don't have very interesting customers, or there's a lack of emotional connection and you don't know whether they're interesting or not. Okay, very good point. Any others aside from that insightful comment? Yeah. Being careful about perception. There's a different kind of risk attached. Precisely. That's one of the biggest barriers to using social media within organizations. And that's what I want to actually address a little bit now. So we know some of the reasons behind why we might want to use social media for our friends. It feels good if they're interesting, and if it's not, then we're probably going to change friends. Interesting fact with, I think it was Facebook, they found that there was a theory that as more and more of us went online to get social, we would create homogenized groups where like attracts like, we're all going to tweet about the same stuff, and so the kind of knowledge that we share will become quite isolated or insular. That didn't happen. At least not with many groups. What happened with many groups was that we actually valued those people on the periphery of our groups more because they gave us access to novel information. So there's an element there about not only a deep-seated desire for connection and communication, but for new information, to be stimulated, to be challenged, to be creatively inspired. It also helps us to measure the intimacy and influence index of our relationships. So how close are you to your customer? How close are you to your brother, to your cousin that you don't see apart from 3 times a week? What kind of relationship do you have with that person? Are you going to share an image of a tapir running through a swimming pool, or are you going to show them something that you read in Harvard Business Review? What does it say about you? For many people, it's become very key to self-esteem. I don't know if many of you are keen followers on Twitter. I absolutely love Twitter. And I remember the first time that I reached 100 followers, I was thrilled. And I'm still thrilled when I reach a new threshold. Oh, brilliant, people like what I have to say. And it's scary when you lose people. You think, oh, who have I offended? What have I said? Have I taken too big a risk and said something that I shouldn't? But for many of us, no matter how much of our self-esteem is entangled with it, there's going to be some emotional involvement there. We're all invested, which is why it's so powerful. In fact, in a global study recently, it was an American study carried out with, I think it was over 40, possibly 46 countries in the world, so pan-cultural study. And they looked at students and young workers who had just graduated. And they asked them, they wanted to find out how important social media was to their lives. And many of these students said to the researchers, social media, access to my platform, to my friends, is as important to me as food and water and shelter. And I would rather stay in on a Friday night chatting on Facebook than going out to the pub with my mates, than finding a new girlfriend, and a whole list of other things that they reeled off. But the real kicker is that 56 of them said that they would refuse to work for a company that banned access to social media. Look at the Fortune 500. These people are coming up, they're thinking in different ways. The entire generation, pretty much, I am generalizing a little bit here, there are people who don't like to go online, but pretty much that entire generation have been born into a world which is plugged in which social media, on and offline, is what they're used to. 56 of them would put their dream job on the line if they weren't allowed access to social media. And yet, how many of the Fortune 500 companies have a strategy in place to allow their employees to engage in social media within the company, let alone outside? 24% said that it would be a deciding factor in accepting a job. So you can see there's actually a lot of substance here. It has real implications in people's quality of life, in the career choices that they make, and in the kind of assets that you'll be taking on or rejecting based on your social media policy. So it has significant implications. In organizations, it's not all bad. We're going to look at risks in a second, but it can engender a real sense of belonging. If you have a brand strategy in place, you know what your core values are, and you're a company that allows your workers to tweet through a Hootsuite account to all your customers, they'll likely feel a sense of membership, a sense of belonging, which is one of the things that we were talking about earlier that was so important, a sense of community. Whether it's used or whether it's not used can also say a lot about an organization's culture. I was working with one big client to help them set up a within-company social media platform. And the biggest problem they had was convincing a couple of the key CEOs at the top who were, sorry, older gentlemen who didn't see the point. They're like, this is frivolous. Why do I want to get involved in social media? All the people coming up and coming into the company, they got it. They really understood the idea. But there was this massive culture clash between the naysayers at the top and the people who were coming in. So how do you bridge that gap? So you need to have advocates within the company. It can also act as a social structure, an alternative social structure. I think this is the thing, aside from the risks of brand image, that potentially can pose a huge threat to organizations. And we saw this. How was your coverage of Twitter use in the Iranian Green Revolution, the Arab Spring? Did you get much coverage over here? You did. In England, there was a lot because there's a lot of, they call them the Twitterati in the UK, people who love Twitter, and there's a lot of celebrities who use it actively. I think one of the, oh, hello. Dramatic effects. It is dramatic. It is dramatic. It's going to burst into song there for a minute. No, I shan't burst into song just yet. Maybe afterwards. But one of the issues that arose when Twitter was used as a platform for journalism, for citizen journalism in the Arab uprising in Iran, was the fact that it was created as a lateral platform in countries in which there is Hofstede describes it as low power distance. Power distance is the degree to which less equal members of a society will accept a power distance between the less equal and the most powerful. So in socialist countries, there's a very low power distance. In dictatorships or theocratic countries, and also places like Russia, there's a high power distance. So what happens if you take a social structure, such as Twitter, that has been created in a low power distance country with small hierarchies, in which it's okay for me to come up to any of you and shake your hand and have a conversation? What happens if you take that and you put it into a country in which the culture has a massive power distance, hierarchy is expected, and the laws are very tight on what you can and can't say? The youth of that country adapt. They see that there's a platform that allows them to connect in a very direct, very lateral way, and potentially the combustion between the online reality and the offline reality causes a huge problem. And the government know this, and the power sources know this. It's the same reason why large companies and organizations who have the power up to date because they've got all the money, they don't want to be put in the position where they're having to be held accountable, because that means that then they have to be able to back up why they've made a mistake and how to deal with that on a more face-to-face, equal footing, if you like. Does that make sense? Okay, enough of it. It's something I'm very passionate about. I'm going to move on from there. So some of the associated risks from the back of that is precisely the lack of controllability. And it's difficult to monitor and to manage. Yes, you can have brand guidelines. If you have a workforce that's particularly engaged and believe in the brand to begin with, which it will be if you are sure of your core values and why you stand for what you do, then it should be able to monitor and manage itself. On Twitter, it tends to be a fairly good self-policing ecosystem because people who use Twitter will cast people out as trolls if they violate the social protocol, generally speaking. The other risk is around transparency and accountability. We were having a chat at the dinner last night about this dilemma that most big brands, in fact all brands, face when choosing how and whether to use social media. And that's how to reconcile, on the one hand, transparency and accountability. What happens when we mess up? Because everyone will mess up. What happens when that happens? How do we deal with mistakes that we make? Balanced against, how do we deal with brand perception? How do we acknowledge the mistakes that we've made whilst maintaining a positive brand image and conveying trust to our customers that they can actually relate to us and will support them and we're credible? And that answer is going to be different for every single one of us in the room. And also, again, relating back to Twitter and the Iranian uprising, the resultant power shifts can be quite big. And that's one of the reasons that cultures within organizations are quite slow to change. So I want to give you a quick example of this in action. Has anyone heard of this example in the States? Getting slizzard? Okay, you will have because you're from the States. There was, I think it was back in 2011, the American Red Cross have a Hootsuite account. Do you all know what that is? Okay, some of you who don't. Hootsuite is an aggregating platform, kind of an aggregating platform, where if all of us were working for the same company, we all log into Hootsuite together, and we can post tweets on behalf of the social conference. And for the outside world, you know, it's coming through the social conference, but it could be any of us in this room. What happens when you give people some alcohol and they accidentally tweet through the public account when they should have tweeted through their private account is this. So this rather lovely girl who was tweeting for the American Red Cross accidentally said, Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer, which is from a local brewery down the road. When we drink, we do it right. Hashtag getting slizzard. So she's obviously quite a cool girl. She likes the microbrewery. Kudos, except that she sent it out to the entire following of American Red Cross. At that point, they had 2 choices. Oh my God, we've done a massive PR faux pas. Let's hide it, delete the tweet, and hope no one notices, and then later deal with the PR fallout. Or, all right, people make mistakes. This is quite fun. Let's just do something that's a bit more in line with our core beliefs and our core values. It's about people, we're personable, there's relationship. That's what they chose. They later sent the next tweet on the right-hand side, which says, we've deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured the Red Cross is sober and we've confiscated the keys. The tone is perfect, but they didn't just stop there. Off the back of that, because they'd ended up with a trending topic in Twitter, they teamed up with a local brewery and created a campaign where a certain number of donations, or a certain amount of the proceeds from the beer went into donations to Red Cross. It was one of the most successful accidental PR campaigns to date. All because they had the foresight to deal with it in a personal, humorous, kind of self-effacing way. That's why it's so important to have a strategy in place as to how you'll respond when things go wrong. So this case study, we actually saw earlier in a previous presentation. It was the one about Dell and how they use the @Dell outlet handle to connect their clients to drive revenue. In 2012, way after the fact, because this happened in 2009, Lionel Mencher, who's one of the chief bloggers at Dell, said that they used social media as a way to listen, learn, and engage with customers. We hear this a lot, engage with customers. Those of us who are working towards the bottom line, who say, well, you know, where does it translate into finance? Where does it translate into the bottom line, the profits of the company? Well, in their mission statement, they said that they used a very simple, very direct, very easy strategy. In fact, they said that they didn't need any strategy. Every company can achieve success using social media by facilitating the conversation. We saw earlier with the community websites, if you let people talk about stuff that they want to talk about with the company or whatever, as long as it's managed somehow, then good things can happen. So they use the 3 C's, connect, find out who our customers are, let's reach out to them, converse, have a 2-way conversation in which what I say to you is held accountable by you and vice versa. We can have a proper dialogue. And then you end up in conversion for many of these people, not all. But it's a soft sell. which ended up in the following return on investment. And if you want to have a look at the article, it's in the Huffington Post, 2009. But they ended up with quite a big revenue through Twitter, and it showed people that actually you could directly see some of the results financially that you could get when you manage things well. Has anyone seen the Corona Light advert? Again, from the States. Americans seem to do it, when they get it right, they do it really, really well. This I've taken as a case study because it highlights the liking phenomenon. Yes, please. $7 million? Or was this a $7 million? $7 million. Oh, no, $7 million. In the first quarter, I think. You can have a look. Hang on. I may be misquoting. It's in there somewhere. Have a look in there. Fact-checking, because there's 550 references went into that. So if there's anything that's not right, that's why I've left the reference. So if I'm incorrect, you can check it and know for yourself. Yes. And actually, if you want references, I do have them, Tan. I'm happy to send them out. Okay, so Corona Light and the Times Square phenomenon. Corona said that they wanted, as their mission statement for this particular campaign, to build a base of consumers that they could re-engage throughout the year to develop a long-term relationship and dialogue. This, to me, sounds like long-term sustainable business through relationship. This is what they did. Over 1 month, I think it was November of 2011, they created a Facebook page, and they got people to like it. In return, if you liked their page, you'd get to download an app that would allow you to upload an image, whatever image you wanted, as long as it wasn't pornographic. So you got rid of all the strippers. Anyway, as long as it wasn't pornographic, you could upload your picture, and they would project it on a 150-foot billboard across Times Square in New York. Amazing. The interesting thing was that loads of people did this. They saw this as their chance for a bit of self-promotion. So you had brides wearing their most amazing gown, talking about how, I don't know, whichever design, I don't really know about clothes designs, had put it up for them. And you had like new bands showcasing their new album, and people with dogs and weird stuff, and babies and things. But it was a complete success. But why was it a complete success? We all know that intuitively, of course, that makes sense. No one's going to argue that that's a bad campaign at this stage. But what was it psychologically that they did right? 3 main things that I want to highlight here. Number 1 was social validation, which Cialdini and Goldstein describe as our desire to develop meaningful social relationships, our friends, our family, we want to have good relationships, and to retain a favorable self-concept. When we go to sleep at night, we want to go to sleep thinking, yeah, I quite like who I am. I'm sure there's a couple of rough edges, but generally I don't hate myself, hopefully. And that's what your teenage years and your 20s are for, is to stop hating yourself and, step into who you are and be happy. And that's a very strong motivator. Okay, maybe that's just me. Anyway, so social validation is very, very important. The second principle that they used really well, and a bit naughtily actually, was reciprocity. This is hardwired. It's been used throughout all tribal societies, throughout all of time, and also in mammals you see this behavior also. The idea that if I give you something, you will feel indebted to give me something back. And usually, you'll give me something back that's of slightly higher worth. Weird. And in any single culture, no matter how individualist or collectivist we are, if you thwart that law of reciprocity, which is unspoken, we don't go around going, oh, I've given you something, now give me something back. If you thwart that law, you're ostracized. There are really bad penalizations for people who don't reciprocate. And we feel really bad if you give a present and someone doesn't give you something back. It feels violating. This is one of the things that they used on the positive side to get people to do what they wanted. So we all would have got not even 5 minutes, like 3 seconds of fame or whatever it was. They got all of that. It's not reciprocal in the slightest in a way. They got new fans, viral promotion, because who doesn't want to be on Times Square? Word of mouth buzz, but most importantly, which they didn't mention as one of their goals, but I'm sure it was, because we all like to data mine time to time, they got access to thousands of people's demographic information through their Facebook accounts, and not just in the USA. I see this as a very, very good move for sussing out new markets. Say that you had 1,000 people from China who said, oh, Corona Light, Times Square, the Times Square, that looks interesting. Okay, but you've liked that now. So if there wasn't previously a market for Corona Light in China, well, guess what? That's 1,000 people from China who have now given you demographic information, and you can target them specifically with a campaign that is likely to get them engaged, or Italy, or wherever it is. And then also long-term advocacy. sort of within a stage. So you get your picture on Times Square, you take a picture of that, you tweet it out, it goes out, and then you associate in some small way your positive experience with that company. It usually takes a few more of those experiences to get advocacy, but it's one of the stepping stones to get to that point. And the final one is social proof. We like to think that we're logical and that we're rational, and some of us are more so than others, which is fine. But basically, most of our decisions occur at a subconscious level, and most of the things that drive us we're not even aware of most of the time. This is one of those things. It's the herd instinct. Social proof is when we see enough people doing a particular behavior, and we just instinctively join in. So it's like, say, that's why you get trends on Twitter. You see enough things, you see enough of a hashtag, and you start becoming curious because everyone else is doing it. What's so important that everyone else is doing this trend? Why does it work? That's kind of why it works. So with this particular liking campaign, they ended up with a global reach, access to all these potential new markets, very clever. 6,000% increase in the number of likes within 30 days, and over 300,000 likes in total, which is very interesting. I'm now going to take you through to a video, which hopefully we can segue into. Yes, cool. No, here we go. That was a sound.
There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change. You know, you can't lead a company like this unless you love food. I love food. I love pizza. It was about 50 years ago that they started the first store just about 5 miles from here.
Two brothers had a great idea, and they also said they wanted to get it delivered within 30 minutes, and that's something that no one said could be done. In fact, the first pizza delivery vehicle for our company is that vehicle right there. Around the 80s, we were exploding. We were the fastest growing company in the history of franchise business. Nothing had ever grown like that.
Now we're almost 9,000 restaurants around the world. We love what we do at Domino's.
Pizza, where's the love? How hard? Bread, sauce, cheese, fresh ingredients. Doesn't feel like there's much love in Domino's Pizza.
Domino's pizza crust to me is like cardboard.
Is it hard to watch this stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
I hear what some folks are saying about our stuff.
Oh, this one's bad. Worst excuse for pizza I've ever had.
The sauce tastes like ketchup.
Totally void of flavor.
You know what? When you first hear it, it's shocking.
The cardboard complaint is the most common one.
This we hear over and over and over.
I mean, that hits you right in the heart. This is what we've done. This is what I've done, for 25 years now.
You can either use negative comments to get you down, or you can use them to excite you and energize your process of making a better pizza. We did the latter.
Most companies hide the criticism that they're getting, and we actually faced it head on.
Some people didn't get us credit for the taste of our product. That's what we're fixing.
We listen to our consumers, and they want us to be better, and we want them to be happier. We want people to love our pizza.
This is what's driving us. This is what's lit the fire under us. This is what's making us want to get better.
Who are we? Domino's Pizza!
It's been crazy down here. We had our best chefs working hard to find the best combination, looking at 10 crust types, 15 sauces, dozens of cheeses.
You can't just add a little salt or add a little something to the recipe. I mean, we basically had to start over with a new recipe.
And they were working day and night and weekends to get it done.
This is Roxanne. She's one of the lead chefs for pizzas, and she's constantly trying new stuff, and she's saying, try this and try that. The day she put this in front of me, I said, dang, this is the real deal.
We changed everything. The crust, the sauce, the cheese. Now it tastes better.
We started working on the cheese.
We've got shredded cheese. Cheese. It's cheese. It's tastier. When you smell it, it's got an aroma to it. I mean, this is what cheese should be.
We started working on the sauce.
New sauce is bright, it's spicy, it's robust.
We've got garlic in here, we've got oregano, we've got basil, we've got and a little bit of red pepper just to tingle on your tongue.
It's a bold flavor.
When you bite into that, that's what pizza sauce should taste like.
We started working on the crust.
A nice, rich, buttery crust with some garlic and some herbs in there.
It gives it a nice finish for you. Great taste from the first bite to the last bite on every single slice.
Now we got great food, we've earned the swagger, right? We're gonna do an end zone dance on this one.
I can't wait to have people try it. And it's not even about being right, it's about us having great food.
No, it's about us being right. And you know, I can't wait for Adrian to try our new pizza.
So I think she's gonna be surprised.
We're gonna bring her the new pizza, see how she likes it. She has no idea we're coming.
Hey.
Adrienne?
Yeah.
Out quite a few of the things that they did that make it compelling. So they started with a bit of a narrative. We've listened to all our customers. They did the classic uplifting music halfway through. The secret is a bit curious. You want to try it. But there are certain key things that they did psychologically that made it work so effectively. You all sort of started watching that, and they took you through an emotional journey, even though it's about pizza, didn't they? A little bit? And it was kind of compelling, even though it's just about pizza, wasn't it? No, not in the slightest. It's not going to hit everybody's buttons, especially not if you've seen it a few times. But the first thing that they did, or that they showed that they did with this video, was that they were monitoring their brand. Most brands should be, well, all brands should be doing this anyway. You should monitor your brand, see what people are saying about you so that you can pivot and sort of create a better relationship. But they did that very publicly. They used that as a centerpiece for this video. They decided to take the criticism and go, right, we've listened to our customers. Here's what you had to say. This is a video, an example of when you get the brand image on that hand and the transparency right. You bring it together so that it works together. It's quite hard to do. So they use the actual negative customer feedback to create a transparent and authentic, well, mostly authentic advertising campaign. The thing that gives it authenticity, at least at the beginning, is the way that they set it up. And you'll notice initially the stuff is authentic. It's videos that they've selected for you to watch of people actually talking in focus groups. What you'll notice is they make a switch halfway through when they start selling. That's the less authentic part. So you start seeing the image of the pizza. You start seeing the advert creep in. But by that point, because it's emotionally engaging, because there's some sort of narrative, most of us will be compelled to watch more. Which leads me on to the final point around credibility, which is essential for all brands if we're going to succeed in the longer term. Because they used a narrative to boost emotional engagement, they were able to show people that they actually care. Whether you agree or enjoyed with the video or not, you can see that at least they did listen to people, no matter how they used that later on for marketing. So it's around transforming reputation and building credibility, and there are various different ways in which you can do that. And they did have a dramatic results in sales. A 14.3% increase in sales in the first quarter of 2010, which was the biggest ever jump in sales in the fast food industry that's been recorded. So actually it did have a dramatic effect. So you can see the actual knock-on. So I've realized I've got 2 minutes and 47 seconds left. So I'm just going to go through just a very quick summary of key takeaways. The main thing to remember in whatever you do is that we're hardwired to be social. If we're not permitted to be social, we will find a way to circumvent the system or to leave altogether, whether that's an organization or a social group. We rely on our relationships to help us make decisions. That means that whatever our peers are doing will have an impact on us. So if you can reach a community and convert key members within that community or enough people within that community, you'll get a cultural change. And you can use psychological principles to engage with and influence your audience within reason, as long as you're not doing it manipulatively. That's a subject for another day, but the ethics are very important. That wraps up this talk. If you want to email me, or tweet me actually, my email address is on my website. You can tweet me. That's the book. I'm going to be doing a quick book signing, and then I'm leaving fairly shortly to dash to get my plane back to London. But should we open the floor for questions?
We have time for questions. Who has a question? I saw one, Maurice tweeted one. Oh, you have one too? Yeah.
Of course, if you use the pizza turnaround, the pizza turnaround was also kind of quoted many times as being a PR hoax, and therefore, your last point about ethics and the way that you should engage, I think this one particularly is a doubtful example. I mean, how do you look at that? Because that potentially just damages completely your brand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It can. There was another example where, I can't remember which company it was, but they'd uploaded a bunch of user-generated content of videos to YouTube of stuff that was filmed on handheld cameras. And they were showing, because research has shown that peer-to-peer content is a lot more effective and persuasive precisely for that reason. And they'd uploaded all this stuff, and they'd seeded it throughout the world from different locations, and it looked, for all intents and purposes, that it was good. But they'd covered their tracks so far that when it came out that it was a hoax, people lost all faith. I think with something like this, most of us feel that there's a sense of truth. I've had Domino's Pizza, I don't like it, it still tastes like cardboard. So there was a bit of lying there anyway, I don't buy into them as a brand, but the fact that they managed to get such an impact and an increase in sales shows that there's something in it, if you do it well. But again, it's that thing of how far do you push it? And I would suggest not too far, because if you do take the piss, people are going to cut you down. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, Maurice tweeted me a question, and he said, what was the persuasion of the Dell case? Was it loss aversion?
Loss aversion of what? What were they losing? Did someone tweet in this room? Yes.
Good. Workout.
The Dell case was about that you can buy a computer or something like that within a small time. So if you don't buy in time, you lose the...
Yeah. So you miss out. Yeah. Well, that's the scarcity principle. Okay. So that works in scarcity of time, scarcity of products. So the simplest way to do it is to limit your products. If you're selling books, and you say, and this was only because I could not carry more than that, 20 books, then you say, well, there's a limited supply. Or if this is on sale for 13 hours and you've got a timer on your website, people feel pressured or panicked into getting it. So yes, I would say that the loss aversion it tends to be more around pain. There's another principle in psychology, which is the endowment effect, which is, like on eBay, you see this quite a lot. People who are in the lead on a bidding item for a period of time start to identify subconsciously as the winning bidder. So I'll think, well, I've been in the lead for 2 hours on this necklace that I really want. I can imagine wearing it. I'm going to wear it out on my Valentine's Day tonight, whatever. And so I'm willing to go and pay more for an item because I value it more, because I've already identified myself with that. So that's another principle that can be used to get people to kind of hike up their prices or act immediately and irrationally. Yeah. Thanks.
Is there one psychological principle that always works, or that works the best, that you would say, like, if I would pick one, take that one?
No.
No?
I think the thing that we have to be really, really careful about is the silver bullet approach. There is never a single silver bullet. For every research study, there will be someone for whom that doesn't work, which is why research is so crucially important. You've come across the Gaussian curve, the Bell distribution of norms. So like in this room, most of us will fall in terms of, like, well, we're not. We'll be at the top end because we're all fabulously intelligent. But generally, in communities, people fall along a bell curve distribution of norms for certain things, so for intelligence, etc. And that's the same with psych studies. Some people, most of us, you can say, yes, reciprocity will work. There'll be some people for whom that just doesn't happen. Psychopaths, for instance, if we don't have the ability physiologically to engage emotionally with people, where's the point with reciprocity unless it's enabling them to get to a perfunctory goal? So, yeah, no. There's like 80% of the time you might expect certain behaviors to emerge with certain principles applied, but there is never a silver bullet. Sorry.
Do we have more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question on the Corona case, because you said what makes people click, and I think it makes people click. But does it also make people really buy Coronas? Because I would click, but I would stick to the Desperados. So what's the psychology behind that one?
Well, and also you can unclick afterwards, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So, and that's the good question. If you've got someone to like something, it's a very binary action. You either like or you don't like. It's an on or off. And you can then retract it later once you've got what you want. So again, it's a question of, for the 100,000 people that you engage, of that number, a percentage is likely to buy your brand, mainly because they've either seen you before, they've reached a point at which they've identified, whatever it is. But the point is that a subset will make all of that work worthwhile. And in terms of that kind of thing on Facebook, the other thing that you're really getting is the demographic information, so that once you've got that knowledge, you can then tailor any future campaigns and make a much more personalized, considered attack or mount a strategy that is more likely to be effective. Yeah. Yeah. Does that answer the question? A little bit. Okay. You can email me. I'll send you some. Okay.
Yeah, email Nathalie your other questions. I want to thank you for your talk.
You're welcome.
You will be signing some books.
Yeah.
We still have 15 minutes for that.
Cool.
And now I'm giving the microphone to Thijs.
Thank you, but not after, of course, a big hand for Nathalie. Thank you very much.